Welcome back. Today we're exploring a chilling case that shook Houston, Texas in the summer of 2002. As we open this story, it's hard not to recall a piercing line from the courtroom that still lingers in the corridors of memory. "She just kept going around and around," one witness testified, voice trembling, and the sound of the engine was the only thing louder than our screams. The crime we're about to delve into, one that left a family in tatters and a community reeling, unfolded beneath the unforgiving glare of a hotel's floodlights and the shimmering Texas heat. It drew the eyes of an entire nation and sparked debates that continued long after the trial concluded, leaving behind lingering questions about love, betrayal, and the ferocity of human emotion when trust is shattered. In late July 2002, the Houston suburb of Nassau Bay was jolted by the news. A well-respected local dentist, David Harris, had been run over and killed in a Hilton hotel parking lot. The perpetrator was not some unknown assailant in a mask, nor a stranger fueled by greed. Instead, the driver was David's own wife, Clara Harris, who had discovered his infidelity and, in a moment that would be recorded by private investigators' cameras, drove her Mercedes-Benz over her husband's body multiple times. It was a crime so raw, so unexpected, that even seasoned reporters fought back tears while delivering the evening news. People in the community who had once looked upon David and Clara's marriage as a fairy tale success story found themselves stunned and searching for answers. The emotional stakes could not have been higher. David Harris's family, friends, and colleagues would soon gather at his funeral, held at a local church decorated with white lilies and flickering candles. There, the air was thick with grief, confusion, and a haunting silence that only punctuated the sobs echoing from the pews. Outside, neighbors lowered their flags to half-mast. Patients from the couple's dental practice, many of them loyal to the Harrises for years, left flowers at the office doorstep. The community struggled to reconcile the gentle image of David, the warm smile, the caring demeanor, the reassuring handshake, with the violent, deadly betrayal that ended his life. Local talk radio stations erupted with callers trying to make sense of it all. Some labeled the tragedy as a crime of passion, others called it an unforgivable act of murder. Many marriages in the area suddenly felt fragile. The veneer of security that stable suburban life promised now showed cracks. Suddenly, infidelity wasn't just a moral failing, it was a cause that, left unchecked, could lead to the most unthinkable outcome. A week after David's death, in the quiet shade of a cemetery lined with live oaks, family members placed roses on a polished headstone. The weather was oppressively hot, over 90 degrees, and the humidity made the air almost too thick to breathe. Mourners dabbed at their faces with handkerchiefs, not sure if it was sweat or tears, as a pastor's voice wavered through a final prayer. Video footage from local news stations captured the rawness of that moment, playing it over and over in nightly broadcasts. This crime had become more than a headline. It was a deeply personal story that rattled the core of a community. One longtime resident compared the event to a painful wound. "We all knew them, at least by reputation," he told a journalist during a candlelight vigil. "And when something this violent happens in our backyard, it makes us question everything we thought we understood about love, marriage, and safety." The city of Houston, usually humming along on the wings of business and progress, paused to reflect on this extraordinary tragedy. In the coming weeks and months, trials and testimonies would reveal more details, each one cutting deeper, each one revealing the cracks hidden beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect marriage. Before we go deeper into the crime itself, it's essential to understand who David Harris was. A man whose life had been marked by hard work, generosity, and a steady presence in both family and community. David, who was 44 at the time of his death, was not just a victim in a headline. He was a husband, a father, a colleague, and a friend. He was a man whose dreams were cut short and whose absence would ripple through the lives of everyone who knew him. David Lynn Harris had come into this world on a warm August day in 1958. Born and raised in a middle-class family in Texas, he had grown up surrounded by love and discipline. His parents instilled in him early on the value of dedication and respect. By the time he reached adulthood, David had carved out a path for himself in the field of dentistry, eventually becoming a well-regarded orthodontist. Those who knew David described him as driven but kind, ambitious yet empathetic. He made a name for himself not only as a skilled dental professional, but as the kind of man who would remember birthdays, call to check on an ailing friend, and participate eagerly in local events. As a young man, David cultivated a series of interests that painted a portrait of someone who appreciated both the finer things in life and its simple pleasures. He enjoyed tennis on weekend mornings with colleagues from dental school, where the friendly competition often ended with laughter and cold iced tea. He was known to attend the local country club's jazz nights. Music, particularly the soft hum of a saxophone under dim lights, held a special place in his heart. Yet David also maintained a humble routine. Every morning he rose around 6 a.m., walked the family dog, a golden retriever named Belle, and skimmed through the local paper over a cup of black coffee. His staff fondly remembered how he arrived early at the dental practice he co-owned with his wife Clara to review patient files, ensuring everything was in order before the first appointment. At 44, David was in the prime of his career. He was financially comfortable, a product of years of dedicated work at a thriving dental clinic that catered to families in the Clear Lake area near NASA's Johnson Space Center. His practice, known for its personalized care, attracted a loyal clientele. Parents praised Dr. Harris for easing their children's fears during orthodontic adjustments. Colleagues admired his meticulous approach and the gentle humor he brought to the office. Friends marveled at how he balanced professional success with a warm, family-centered life. David's personality shone through in countless details. He loved to host backyard barbecues, meticulously grilling steaks over mesquite wood and playing classic rock tunes. Students who rotated through his practice as interns often spoke highly of his mentorship, describing him as patient, knowledgeable, and supportive. During dental conferences, he was the one who'd remember to ask a colleague about their spouse's recent surgery or their child's soccer tournament. He was quick with a smile, easy with laughter, and always ready to lend a hand. Those who knew David from school days recalled a sharp-minded student who excelled in biology and chemistry, yet never lost sight of compassion. Former teachers described him as diligent and thoughtful, a student who sat in the first row taking notes, yet still offered to help classmates who struggled. Friends remembered him as the quiet leader of their group, the one who mediated disagreements and kept everyone united. He had hopes for the future as well. Before his untimely death, David had spoken excitedly about expanding the practice, perhaps adding another chair or bringing in a new associate. He had considered volunteering more time to charity programs that offered free dental work to underprivileged children. He wanted to write a book one day, a guide to improving patient communication, so that young dentists could learn the importance of bedside manner. But above all, he looked forward to watching his children grow up, supporting their dreams, cheering from the sidelines at school events. His last known normal day began like so many others. Early morning light crept through the blinds as he slipped on his pressed shirt and slacks. He enjoyed a quiet breakfast, read the news, made a few patient calls, and headed off to the practice. Colleagues at the clinic later recounted that he seemed his usual calm, focused self that day, discussing the possibility of new orthodontic tools and joking about the Houston weather. A recently discovered home video, recorded by a family friend at a neighborhood cookout 2 weeks prior, showed David laughing with a group of friends. He twirled his younger daughter around, her shrieks of delight audible over the sound of sizzling burgers. In the background, Clara smiled, chatting with neighbors. It all looked so ordinary and so happy, a snapshot of a peaceful suburban life where tragedy seemed impossible. That sense of normalcy made the horror of his death all the more shocking. When community members learned what had happened, they were stunned that a man so stable and so seemingly content would be at the center of such a violent act. The victim in this case was not a faceless individual. He was embedded in the social fabric of the city. His absence would leave an undeniable void. The tragedy played out in Houston, Texas, a sprawling metropolis known for its space industry connections and thriving cultural scene. In 2002, the greater Houston area, with its population of around 2 million in the city proper and several million more in the surrounding suburbs, was a patchwork of neighborhoods each with its own character. Nassau Bay, where the fatal event occurred, was a serene community near Clear Lake, just southeast of downtown Houston. Known for its proximity to the NASA Johnson Space Center, the area often attracted professionals, engineers, medical staff, and business owners who wanted a suburban life not too far from the bustle of the city. Nassau Bay was home to around 4,000 residents at the time. It was a place where waterfront properties overlooked boats, bobbing on gentle waves, and neighbors greeted each other on evening walks. There were well-maintained parks for families, small shopping strips with boutique stores, and an array of dining options. The local Hilton Hotel, where David was killed, was known for hosting business conferences, weddings, and social gatherings. It wasn't unusual for well-to-do couples like David and Clara to be seen there, attending events or enjoying a quiet dinner. This corner of Houston was influenced by the presence of NASA's Space Center. The community took pride in the achievements of the nation's space program. Many residents were either connected to or friends with engineers, astronauts, or program managers. On weekends, children played soccer in well-lit fields, and families picnicked while gentle breezes rolled off the lake. The skyline of downtown Houston lay about 20 miles to the northwest, its skyscrapers visible on clear days. Closer in, the Kemah Boardwalk provided a place to gather, eat seafood, and enjoy amusement rides. July weather was typically hot, with high humidity. On the night of David's death, the air was sticky and the sky cloudless, a stark contrast to the darkness that would soon engulf the community's mood. Geographically, Nassau Bay sat snugly against Clear Lake's western shore. Streets were laid out in neat residential grids leading to main thoroughfares that connected to Houston's major highways. A few local law enforcement patrol cars typically sufficed for crime prevention in this peaceful enclave. Rarely did anything more than traffic violations or minor disputes trouble the neighborhood's calm. The night David died changed that perception permanently. News vans parked near the hotel, their headlights illuminating the quiet streets. Newspaper reporters scribbled notes under street lamps. Even the gentle hum of boat engines passing by on Clear Lake seemed subdued, as if nature itself sensed the gravity of this unprecedented crime. David's family arrangement was, at least from the outside, a picture of suburban success. He was married to Clara Harris, and together they had built a stable home life. They resided in a comfortable two-story house with a neatly manicured lawn, located in a neighborhood where children rode bicycles after school and parents chatted easily across driveways. Both David and Clara were well-known orthodontists who ran their own dental clinic, catering to patients from every walk of life. The family included children aged 6 and 7 and 8-year-old girls, a set of twin boys just entering elementary school, full of energy and curiosity about the world, and David's daughter from a previous marriage, Lindsay, a teenager who looked up to her father and sought his guidance during those tumultuous years of adolescence. Within this family structure, relationships varied in depth and complexity. David had once described his household as busy but loving, according to a friend who interviewed him for a local magazine years before the incident. He and Clara met through professional circles, two dentists, attracted not only to each other's intellect and ambition, but to the shared vision of a thriving practice. Their marriage was considered strong in its early years, a partnership that balanced business and pleasure. Over time, subtle cracks might have formed beneath the polished exterior, but few people outside the home were aware of any marital strain. Daily life in the Harris household followed a predictable pattern. Mornings were a symphony of routine, alarm clocks at dawn, the aroma of coffee wafting through the kitchen, children's backpacks arranged by the door. David and Clara often headed together to their practice, located just a short drive away. In the evenings, dinner might consist of grilled chicken salads or takeout sushi. Weekends were often spent at the country club, enjoying a round of golf or hosting friends for backyard gatherings. There was a sense of comfort and normalcy that the couple radiated whenever they appeared in public. Recent family events included a birthday celebration for Lindsay, and according to a family acquaintance, a small party had been held at the house just weeks before the incident, where Lindsay received a new camera and Clara praised the bond they were all building as a blended family. To the outside world, their economic situation seemed stable, even prosperous. The dental practice was doing well, allowing for a life that included occasional vacations, private school tuition, and well-chosen investments. The Harrises were not flashy, but there was no mistaking their comfortable standing in the community. Neighbors viewed the Harrises as model citizens. They were seen as pillars of local life, attending community fundraisers, volunteering at the church's dental health drives, and making generous donations to local charities. Clara, always stylish in her attire, was admired for her success in a traditionally male-dominated field, and David was praised for his clinical skill and kind bedside manner. Yet, beneath the surface, tensions would soon unravel. Even with all these advantages, the emotional climate inside the Harris home had become complex, and the dynamic between husband and wife had begun shifting in unexpected ways. The build-up to the crime was a perfect storm of suspicion, jealousy, and betrayal that culminated on a hot July evening. In the weeks leading up to David's death, Clara had grown increasingly suspicious that her husband was being unfaithful. Though David tried to maintain a veneer of normalcy, small changes in his routine had not gone unnoticed. He worked late more often, citing aftermath's administrative duties at the practice. He took phone calls in hushed tones from a corner of the living room. There were whispers that he had grown close to a former employee, meeting her for dinners that weren't on the family's calendar. Clara, already on edge, decided to hire a private investigator, an action that would later provide chilling evidence of the crime. On July 24, 2002, David's last known movements were documented in a patchwork of witness accounts, CCTV footage, and phone records. By 3 p.m., David had finished seeing patients and left the dental office. From 3:30 p.m. to about 5 p.m., he was reportedly at a local cafe, according to a waitress who remembered him because he was a regular. He made a phone call around 4:15 p.m., captured by cell tower records, to a number belonging to the woman he had been seeing. By early evening, David's black SUV pulled into the parking lot of the Nassau Bay Hilton. Security camera footage, later presented in court, showed him meeting a woman in the lobby at approximately 7 p.m. Both were dressed casually. Their interaction appeared cordial, even affectionate. The weather that night offered no respite from the tension. Temperatures hovered around 88 degrees even after sunset, and humidity was high. The parking lot was lit by tall, bright lamps that cast stark shadows. Witnesses later described seeing a white Mercedes-Benz circling the lot. One recalled checking his watch. It was 7:50 p.m. when he noticed the car for the second time, driving slowly, as if looking for something or someone. Another witness said the driver seemed in a hurry, but also lost, glancing at the rearview mirror repeatedly. Social media was not as prevalent in 2002 as it would be in later years, but phone records and beeper messages showed increased tension. Clara had made multiple calls to friends and to the private investigator that evening, growing more agitated as time passed. She wanted confirmation of David's location. According to later testimony, Clara had told a confidant on the phone at around 7:30 p.m., "I'll make sure he never lies to me again," her voice shaking. Just minutes before the crime, at approximately 7:58 p.m., David stepped out of the hotel lobby door. Surveillance footage showed him and the woman separating. He turned to head towards his SUV, and she lingered behind in the glass-covered foyer. The skies were clear, the asphalt dark under fluorescent lamps, and somewhere in the distance, cicadas hummed. At 8 p.m., according to multiple witnesses, the white Mercedes roared into view. Tire marks, later photographed by forensics, would tell the story of what happened next. Clara Harris, born in Colombia and raised with a passion for dentistry and ambition for a better life, had built herself into a respected professional in Houston. By 2002, she was in her 40s, and like David, she was a practicing dentist. She wore her success gracefully. Elegant suits, a silver necklace that was her signature piece, and a winning smile that reassured nervous patients. Clara's family history was one of upward mobility. She had come to the United States with dreams of making a name for herself, supported by hardworking parents who believed in education and perseverance. Over the years, she worked tirelessly, completing her dental education and eventually co-founding a practice that became a local success story. Clara's education background was impressive. She had attended a top dental school, completed residency programs, and gained a reputation as a meticulous practitioner. Her social life largely revolved around professional circles, dental conferences, community fundraisers, and dinners with colleagues. An online presence, still modest in 2002, might have included a professional profile on a dental association website and a listing in the local Chamber of Commerce directory. Friends described her as driven, focused, and somewhat reserved, a perfectionist who expected the best of herself and others. Known behaviors included meticulous planning, attention to detail, and a certain intensity that could be intimidating to some. Though no major previous incidents of violence were recorded, Clara had a strong personality and was not known to back down from conflict easily. Psychological experts later commented that she might have internalized stress for years, balancing career, family life, and marital insecurities before it all erupted in a single night of uncontrollable rage. Her relationship to David was at the center of her life. They had married in the 1990s and worked side by side at the clinic, forging a reputation as a dynamic duo in dentistry. Patients saw them as a power couple, professional equals who complemented each other's strengths. Yet, in the months before the crime, subtle hints emerged that Clara felt overshadowed or threatened. A diary entry later submitted into evidence revealed her fears of losing David to another woman. "I feel him slipping away," she wrote. "Everything we built seems fragile. I cannot live without him." Colleagues recalled that Clara seemed more restless in the last year of the marriage. She asked pointed questions about David's schedule, showed interest in who he was meeting, and occasionally arrived unannounced at events where he was expected to be. This anxiety, combined with the revelation of his infidelity, would set the stage for a confrontation unlike anything the quiet streets of Nassau Bay had ever seen. The night of July 24, 2002 was a perfect storm for Clara's unraveling. She had solid evidence, courtesy of the private investigator, that David was meeting his mistress at the Hilton. She knew the time and place. She arrived there not as a composed professional, but as a woman betrayed, emotions simmering to a boil. Clara's intentions that night remained debated. Did she plan to confront him verbally? Did she intend to scare him? Or was she seized by a rage so blinding that logic vanished in an instant? As the investigation and trial would later show, Clara's background did not predict such violence. She had never been charged with any crime, was respected in her field, and had no known history of volatile outbursts severe enough to hint at homicide. Experts later speculated about mental strain, emotional trauma, upon discovering the affair, and the ways suppressed anger can erupt. But on that fateful evening, none of these analyses mattered to the people who watched in horror, as the white Mercedes accelerated. At approximately 8 p.m., the crime unfolded with shocking swiftness. David Harris stepped out of the Hilton lobby, the parking lot lit by cold white lamps. The white Mercedes, driven by Clara, appeared at the lot's entrance. Witness accounts suggest that David spotted the vehicle too late. Several onlookers distinctly remember hearing the engine's roar. Clara's Mercedes lunged forward, headlights flashing, and struck David. He was thrown onto the pavement, and in what seemed like an eternity compressed into seconds, Clara circled around and ran over him again. A private investigator's camera captured the brutal scene, which would later be played frame by frame in court, silencing the jury and public alike. The exact timeline, reconstructed from hotel CCTV footage and multiple witness statements, indicates the first impact happened at 8:15 p.m. Screams erupted. People in nearby cars honked, shouted, and rushed to call 911. A woman's voice could be heard yelling, "Stop! Stop!" The mistress, visible in the footage behind the lobby's glass doors, pressed her hands over her mouth in horror. The second impact followed almost immediately as Clara looped around. Witnesses reported that she leaned forward and gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity. David's body lay still on the asphalt. Physical evidence left no doubt as to what happened. Tire impressions on the pavement, consistent with a sudden acceleration, matched the pattern on Clara's Mercedes. Blood samples, torn clothing, and the position of David's body told the story of overwhelming force. The hotel's security cameras, though not capturing every angle, provided enough footage to show Clara's car circling around. Forensic analysis of the vehicle's undercarriage found trace evidence consistent with having struck David. Phone records show Clara's increasingly frantic calls to friends and the private investigator that evening, culminating in the act of violence that ended her husband's life. The weather conditions that night, clear skies, bright lighting, meant visibility was good, leaving no room for claims that Clara did not see David. Witness testimonies were harrowing. One hotel guest who had stepped outside to smoke described the sound of the impact as a sickening thud, followed by screams. Another recalled looking at his watch to fix the time of the incident in his memory, a habit he had as a former police officer. He later testified, "I saw her run him over. I can't erase that from my mind." CCTV footage from the hotel's main entrance showed David entering the lobby around 7 p.m. with the other woman and leaving at 8 p.m. alone. Another camera, perched above the hotel's parking gates, captured the Mercedes' movements. Phone records placed Clara near the scene and showed several calls made minutes before the incident. Police reports detailed that the first responding officer arrived at 8:10 p.m., finding David motionless and Clara weeping, claiming she did not mean to kill him but only wanted to hurt him so he would never cheat again. The crime scene description is chilling. David's body lay near the front of his SUV, keys still in his pocket, his cell phone broken on the pavement. The white Mercedes idled a few yards away, the engine still warm, headlights illuminating a tableau of death and despair. Around them, bewildered hotel guests and staff attempted to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Newspapers the next day would struggle to find words strong enough to convey the intensity of this tragedy. The investigation process began the moment the first patrol car arrived. Police quickly secured the scene, cordoning off the hotel parking lot with yellow tape and ushering away onlookers. The initial response was methodical. Officers took statements, gathered scattered personal items, and requested backup. David's body was photographed for evidence and then carefully transported to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. Search efforts for any related evidence extended to the hotel lobby, David's SUV, and Clara's Mercedes. Forensic analysts combed over the car, collecting samples of fiber, paint, and blood. Evidence collection included reviewing the private investigator's videotapes. To the shock of many, Clara had hired these investigators to confirm her husband's infidelity, and ironically, their cameras captured the murder. Investigators interviewed witnesses, hotel employees, guests, passers-by, and each recounted similar versions of the event: a furious wife, a terrified husband, and a fatal collision under the hot Texas night. Forensic analysis focused on tire marks and the trajectory of the Mercedes. Experts measured distances, angles, and impact velocity. The breakthrough moment in the investigation came when detectives reviewed the videotape obtained from the private investigator. It showed unmistakably that Clara circled the lot and hit David again after the initial impact, leaving no doubt about intent. Police statements to the media were cautious, but acknowledged the gravity of the crime. "This appears to be a case of domestic violence taken to an extreme," said one spokesperson. Community involvement surged. Neighbors called tip lines, offering any recollection they had of recent arguments they might have overheard. Churches organized prayer groups, and local women's shelters highlighted the dangers of domestic disputes escalating into violence. Meanwhile, the media camped outside the Harris household and the dental practice, seeking interviews and filming any activity around the property. A timeline of the investigation shows efficiency. By the end of July, forensics had a clear picture of how the crime occurred. By August, police had compiled a robust set of evidence that left little room for mystery. That didn't stop the rumor mill, though. Local talk shows speculated about a momentary lapse of sanity, while tabloids focused on the affair. The media coverage was intense, with reporters analyzing every detail, from Clara's body language during initial questioning to the tone of her voice in recorded calls. With the evidence mounting, Clara Harris was arrested. She was charged with murder, and the case moved swiftly to legal proceedings. The prosecution had video evidence, eyewitnesses, phone records, and forensic analysis at its disposal. The defense would have to craft a strategy that explained this unimaginable act in a manner that might reduce culpability. Clara's arrest details were straightforward. She was taken into custody on the night of the murder, read her rights, and placed in a patrol car as cameras flashed. The charges filed were murder intentionally causing the death of another human being, Court proceedings began with a media frenzy. Journalists from across the country descended on Houston. Each hearing drew crowds, with some people lining up at dawn to secure a seat in the courtroom. Witness testimonies played a central role. Hotel guests described the horror of seeing a man run over repeatedly. The private investigator testified, presenting video evidence. Expert testimonies came from forensic analysts who described the impact and the trajectory of the car, and from psychologists who tried to explain how a spouse could snap under emotional strain. Defense attorneys attempted to portray Clara as a distraught wife who acted in a moment of emotional insanity. They emphasized her previously clean record, her professional success, and the shock of discovering her husband's betrayal. They argued that she had not intended to kill David, only to confront him, and that she lost control. The prosecution's approach was more direct. They highlighted the deliberateness of the act. Running over David once could be seen as vehicular manslaughter if accidental, but circling back and running over him again showed intent. The video footage left the jury with a stark image of rage overtaking reason. Court documents revealed that Clara's own words, captured shortly after the incident, were damning. She admitted wanting to hurt him, to prevent him from leaving her for another woman. Witnesses recalled her screaming at the scene, and that emotional outburst contrasted sharply with her polished public persona. The media dubbed the trial the Mercedes murder, sensationalizing the wealth and status of the couple. A verdict was delivered after a tense deliberation. In February 2003, Clara Harris was found guilty of murder. The sentencing was swift and severe. She received 20 years in prison, a sentence that signaled the court's refusal to excuse what it viewed as a crime of passion taken too far. Appeals followed, as is common in such high-profile cases, but the central verdict stood. Clara Harris would serve her time, while the community struggled to make sense of what had transpired. The impact and aftermath of the crime reverberated through Houston and beyond. The community response was multifaceted. Some residents felt sympathy for Clara, seeing her as a woman driven mad by betrayal. Others were outraged, insisting that no amount of heartbreak justified the violent death of a spouse. David's family released statements expressing profound sadness and urging people to remember David not just as a victim, but as a loving father, a dedicated professional, and a kind friend. In the years that followed, legislative changes were not directly linked to this case, but discussions about domestic violence and crimes of passion surfaced in public forums. Advocacy groups used the tragedy to educate couples about healthy communication and to stress the importance of seeking help when relationships become strained. Memorial services for David were held annually by some of his loyal patients and friends, ensuring that his memory did not fade with time. Photographs and personal anecdotes were shared, painting a picture of a man whose life was about more than just how it ended. The legacy of the crime was a cautionary tale about letting anger fester until it explodes. The Clear Lake area and Nassau Bay communities adopted a more vigilant stance toward domestic disputes. Local police departments worked closely with community organizations to raise awareness about signs of escalating domestic tension. Some dental and medical associations in Houston implemented stress management workshops and counseling services to help professionals cope with the pressures of work and family, hoping to prevent similar tragedies. Long-term effects included lingering sadness and confusion, especially among those who knew the Harrises personally. Patients who once laughed in David's chair now felt a pang walking past the old practice location. The building eventually housed another dental firm, but older residents still remembered where it all began and ended. A neighbor who once enjoyed Clara's garden parties said that for years afterward, she couldn't park in a hotel lot without remembering the crime. Prevention measures emerged in various forms. Couples therapy and marriage counseling saw a spike in interest as people realized how quickly unresolved issues could escalate. Support systems, counseling centers, women's shelters, family therapists reported that new clients often mentioned the Clara Harris case as a turning point in their decision to seek help. There was a realization that beneath the polished exteriors of professional couples, hidden resentments could boil over into violence if left unchecked. The current status of the aftermath, many years down the line, is one of muted memory. Clara Harris served her sentence and was eventually released. She keeps a low profile, while David's memory lives on in the hearts of his family and friends. Houston, with its ever-expanding skyline and changing demographics, has many other stories to tell. But this crime remains a stark reminder that no community, however affluent or peaceful, is immune to the darker sides of human emotion. And so we conclude this long, winding narrative that began on a humid July night in 2002 and ended with a family torn apart and a community forever changed. The Clara Harris murder case showed us how love can curdle into hatred when trust is betrayed, and how a single moment of fury can undo years of building a life together. It underscores the importance of addressing conflict, seeking help, and understanding that no relationship should ever reach such a violent climax. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories. Let us know your thoughts on this case in the comments below. What warning signs do you think might have prevented this tragedy? And how do you believe communities can better address issues of infidelity and domestic tension before they turn deadly? If this story gripped you, consider delving into other notorious true crime cases from the Houston area, such as the Candyman murders or the tragic killing of Officer Jeffrey Helton. These stories, while disturbing, serve as reminders that the threads holding our lives together can be fragile, and that understanding the human elements behind these crimes might help prevent similar tragedies in the future. Join the discussion, stay informed, and remember, it's only through confronting these dark chapters of our past that we can hope to build a safer, more understanding community in the future.